Welcome to another episode of the North Carolina Voice. We appreciate your being with us tonight. Last week, we brought you the Carolina Values Summit instead of the Voice because we realized the importance of the upcoming election and how our values are going to be impacted by who wins that election. The Carolina Values Summit was directed towards pastors and ministry leaders and faith leaders across the state, but everyone is welcome to watch it. So watch your inbox for upcoming episodes where you can participate and watch the Carolina Values Summit if you missed it last week. Tonight, it is my great privilege to announce that we have E.C. Sykes with us. E.C. is a candidate for Secretary of State. He's running against Elaine Marshall, who is a 75-year-old career politician who's running for her 25th year as Secretary of State. E.C., on the other hand, is a career businessman, a man of strong faith, and an exceptionally gifted business leader. E.C.'s family traces its history back 300 years in the state of North Carolina. He and his wife were raised in Durham, and he attended NC State University, graduating with a degree in electrical engineering and a master in science in management. He is the founder of Iceland Ventures, a private equity real estate company, and previously he served as the chief executive officer of Black Box. He served as the executive director for faith and religious liberty for the Ted Cruz campaign in the 2016 presidential election. And he was president and CEO of Switch Lighting, a group president named executive officer of Flextronics International, and chief executive officer of Circuit Board Assemblers. And in 2019, EC was inducted into the NC State Hall of Fame. How wonderful. He and Susan, his wife of 33 years, have 2 children and worship at Mount Vernon Baptist Church in Raleigh, where they live. E.C., welcome to The Voice. It's great to have you with us.
Tammy, it's great to be here. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you for coming. Now, E.C., I met you and Susan over 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And I must say, I never thought I'd see you run for public office.
Well, you're not alone. You already talked to my wife about that as well. And so it was not in our plans, but we think now's the time.
Well, I mean, you've been a successful CEO and businessman for your entire career. And you've served in several high-level corporations. So what made you want to run for public office?
Well, I mean, that's true. We were prepared through our business training that we had. But Tammy knows we also had the opportunity to serve people in fighting for social issues. Right? We were mentored to Pregnancy Life Centers. I'm on the advisory board for a pregnancy group. You know, we foster cared in the past. We were leaders in our church. And it's really those social issues that caused us to serve at this time. You know, we see the evidence that the values that we hold as true to us and traditional North Carolina values are under attack. And that we need people that will stand up for those values and be able to pass them along to the next generation. And we're called to do that. And so we're standing up for those things that we think made North Carolina great and will make North Carolina great in the future.
That's wonderful, E.C. I admire the reasons you're running for office, and I thank you for being concerned about the next generation and being willing to sacrifice your comfort at this stage in life to be a public servant. So thank you. Now, what made you decide Secretary of State?
Yeah, so, you know, we were compelled to run because of the fight for values. The Secretary of State's office responsibilities focus on business. Whether it's regulating companies, the technical process that comes into doing that, or whether it's setting the foundation for growth of economic growth here in North Carolina. And so the business experience that you outlined in the introduction is what prepared us to be able to serve the people of North Carolina. When we made that decision, we never imagined we'd be in the COVID crisis that we are now and what's happened to our economy. And now we think we're more prepared than ever. The best solution that we've got to really be able to come along and to help the people of North Carolina during a difficult economic time here.
Well, that's great. Your opponent, Elaine Marshall, seems to lack any of the qualifications that one would think of that would make a good Secretary of State. I mean, she's held the position for 24 years, though, and Her degree was in home economics. She spent her early career working as a store manager and a teacher, and then she became a lawyer and appears to be a career politician. She was a state senator for 1 year, Secretary of State for 24 years, and 2 unsuccessful runs for U.S. Senate. And now at age 75, she's running again. So, Esy, what do you think in your professional experience and training qualifies you as the best candidate in this race?
Yeah, we've been blessed with the opportunity to create tens of thousands of jobs, many of them in the manufacturing sector for people. And we think job creation is important. We think economic the security in people is important. There's a type of bondage that we have too, with people trapped in poverty. If we can do some things to help people move out of that condition by creating an economic environment here in North Carolina that helps all the citizens become more prosperous, then it'd be what a great opportunity and for us to be able to give back to a state that's given so much to us.
I'd much rather have a successful businessman than a career politician running the office of Secretary of State.
I think we can use a lot more business experience in state government. I think it's a general principle that we get encouraged with, that people like people with business experience there. Sometimes you get politicians that started early in their career and kind of became lifelong career politicians. Obviously, that's not our case. And so we get a chance to bring in that experience we had to put in just common sense business principles that we found that will work, that we think will also be effective in state government.
Great. Well, I wondered, when you were leading the Faith and Religious Liberty Coalition for Ted Cruz when he ran for president, what are some of the lessons that you learned?
So a lot, and it was life-changing. It wasn't the plan. We went in as a volunteer to help, and we got moved into that position after a period of time, and it was an honor to be able to take on that role and responsibility. And I learned a lot. And actually, in hindsight, it prepared me for this opportunity that we have in front of us. In that role, I was a national executive director, and so we got a chance to talk to the leading faith leaders across our nation.
That's wonderful.
And if you remember in 2016, it was looking kind of rough, right?
It was.
We were on a precipice, and it was either going to go, to a bad place or to a better. And so those men and women were concerned. And I remember so many of them praying, begging God, give us just one more chance. I mean, they saw what was there, and they wanted to be able to turn our nation back to the righteous way that it had in the past. And so their great desire. And so I had the opportunity to experience that and to be taught and trained by those faith leaders as they were desperately seeking God's will and favor during that difficult time. And then that, for me, as I reflect on it, the voice I hear loudest from that is that after the election was decided in the way that they had prayed, it means right today, we're living in a time of one more chance. God gave us one more opportunity to get it straightened out.
Yes.
But that clock won't give us that forever. I mean, that's imperative, I think, that we need to take full advantage of the time that we have. We need to move quickly to, support and our biblical values that are here, and get our nation pointed back into the traditional position, respect for those values that we've had.
That's why I'm so encouraged to see people like you running for office. Thank you. Well, I want you to join me in watching a short video about Esy and why he decided to run for Secretary of State.
My heart, like my accent, is pure North Carolina. No matter where I travel, folks ask and I reply proudly, it's vintage North Carolina. And when I say vintage, I mean my family roots run 300 years deep in the North Carolina soil. When our country was born, we were here. My grandparents were family farmers who instilled in me a strong work ethic. My dad was a police officer. My mother served cancer patients. Both were heroes who taught me about serving God, sacrifice, and public service. And for that, I've always been grateful. At 9, I sold tomatoes door to door. It was me, a red wagon, a scale, and some vine-ripe tomatoes rolling down the street, looking for $1 for 3 pounds. But I loved it. To pay for tuition at North Carolina State, I worked first as an electrician and later as a junior engineer. I learned so much in those jobs. At college, I met Susan, my wife, my partner, my better half for the past 30 years. We started our career and family in Rolesville, sent the population skyrocketing from 500 to 504. You get the point. Raised Carolyn and Matthew to be inquisitive, appreciative, and decent down to their core. And I take more pride in them than any company I turned around or recognition I received. The values my parents taught me were passed to my children, and they taught me the importance of priorities, responsibility, and a child's love. They inspire me still to this day as I announce my candidacy to become our next Secretary of State. We all recognize that North Carolina is changing, some of it for the better, some of it not so much. Our core values like individualism, family, equality, freedom, and the opportunity to prosper through hard work have been threatened. Not so long ago, when disasters hit, we relied upon each other before turning to government. We are people who help people, and we've allowed elected officials to coast along at taxpayers' expense without being held accountable, without delivering results. And that's just unacceptable. As your next Secretary of State, I will use my leadership and business experience to eliminate wasteful spending, modernize our systems, and restore our core values to state government. We will be a model that others can follow. If you want North Carolina to thrive for another 300 years, we need to take control over state government and our destiny. If you're ready to get to work, please join my campaign. It's a big tent. Everyone is welcome. Everyone has a part to play. May God bless you and the great state of North Carolina.
Easy, let's talk about the office of Secretary of State.
Okay.
What changes will you make to the office if you get elected? I know you've noticed some things are not working well there.
I have, and one of the reasons I was successful in business is because I listen to customers. You understand their needs, and you create value that they want to use. And
What
so
a novel idea.
Yeah, it is. It is. And that's the same way in our state government. Our state government should be serving the people. As I travel the state, I hear the voices of people saying, this is not working for me. Actually, surprisingly, the number one question I probably get as I travel the state is, what does the Office of Secretary of State do? And I'll contend if somebody's been in that office for 24 years and hasn't made an impact on people's lives during that period of time, that they haven't been as engaged as they need to be.
Right.
Look, that office. One of the complaints says, "Look, we just don't get served as well as we need to be served." Right? And so the customer service is lacking there. It's important for companies to be able to go to get information. They have to do regular filings. That process is more complex than it needs to be. There's a fee structure that needs to be adjusted there. That the Secretary of State should lead the march for that being done, because they got the most insights as to what businesses has. So
Well, it's a revenue creator. Those fees are
they
not
are
for the state.
They are, and so it's important for, as that's put together, for that to be done in a way that's supportive of companies there. And so I look forward to putting in a structure that is more customer friendly, that's more supportive of the businesses that are there. So it's easier to do business in North Carolina than it is today. That's something that we've done in the past, and so we feel comfortable doing that. That's one thing.
I feel confident you can lead that process.
We've had the opportunity to work in companies that were in distress before and to turn companies around. And so, and because of that, we particularly feel like we've been equipped to be able to help in this case. But there's also been an issue here where I think we all make decisions based upon our worldview. And I have a biblical worldview, and so I make decisions through that filter. And it's clear that the incumbent has not been practicing that in the decisions she's made. And some of those have been just the rule of law, right? And so they've pushed the boundaries in certain areas. And I think we need to bring this office back clearly inside the rule of law. One of those is transparency. Tammy, when I was a public CEO, every quarter I had to stand up and I had to face our customer base, our investors, and I had to give them a report of how the company had done and what the company was going to do. and full transparency was required. And there were severe
Got it.
consequences if you didn't do it.
But that ought to be the case in government as
Why
well.
is it not
Yeah,
in government?
it
If you
should be.
require it from our public companies, why don't we require that from the people that are supposed to be serving us, right?
And yet what we see so many times is deception and just trying to cover up
Playing with
exactly
the
what's
facts.
happening. Yeah.
Right? And so the integrity of and transparency of what's happening in that office is one of the things that I want to bring to the office as well.
That's great. You know, one of the main complaints I've heard about the Secretary of State's office right now is that the technology is just old school. It is just too hard to file things electronically online,
Yeah.
and you can't find things easily. And so what would you do, EC, to bring the technology in the Secretary of State's office into the 21st century?
Yeah, technology is always on the change, and we all know it's changing faster now than it's ever changed in the past. And so whatever you've done is not going to continue to work for you in the future. There's opportunities for us to continue to improve there, and those improvements drive productivity that's there. North Carolina State should be, our state, and particularly Secretary of State's office, should be a leader in implementing those new technologies, not a follower.
It should be.
And the evidence is we're not even a fast follower at this
I
point
agree.
in time, right?
I totally agree.
And so if you go back and look at even the latest programs that were put in place during the COVID crisis and the notaries and the changes that were made there, some changes need to take place. And we're just slow to get those implemented. One of the privileges I had was to be the CEO of an IT company. And as a result of that, you really get a feel of the pace of technology change and how to put in tools. So I'm going to be careful in that if I outlined anything today as to what specifically you do, it'd probably be outdated in 2 days from now. I think it's more of the principle of understanding how to continually adapt to changing technology and how to understand how to be of the forefront. If we have all of these universities here
Yes.
that are so helpful
Yeah.
in leading technology, we should be a technology leader in the Secretary of State's office.
I couldn't agree more, and I couldn't agree more that Elaine Marshall has not been a leader in that area. So right now, our economy's hurting because of COVID-19, and we have over 1 million people who've lost their jobs because of the pandemic. And what are some of the things that you can do as Secretary of State that would encourage companies to come here and help create a more friendly business environment so we can create some more jobs to get those people back to work?
Yeah, and it's true. People are suffering. We've gone through some of the worst times in our nation's history, and certainly the worst times in memory of the people that are here. This is hard, and I feel for them. And for people to be able to get back to work, there's clearly some leadership that's needed. And a person that's been through creating jobs in the past will probably be the most successful person to be able to help create jobs in the future.
Great concept, isn't it?
It is. And so, we're fortunate to have been trained in that area. Now we get a chance to put that training to work for the people in North Carolina. And a large part of that is understanding each industry and what the needs are. So I've been talking to different industries across the state. I've been talking to people in the lumber industry, in the farming industry, in the livestock industry that's there, because agriculture is still our largest revenue driver here in North Carolina, and it needs to get the attention as to how we work with that group. But even in the technology industry, one solution is not going to work for each one of those industries. Each one of them has their own specific needs. Each one of them has their own problems that they need to solve. And one of the things I learned in business is you try to consolidate that decision making into one place and then roll it out. You can never create a perfect solution.
That's very perceptive.
If you can push that down to the lowest competent level, back down to where that decisions need to be made at, and then focus on enabling those people as opposed to driving them with what you think should be, you're much more, and they'll be much more successful. Let them participate in the value creation process, and then come along beside of them to give them what they need in order to be successful with the solutions that they know they need to create.
That's great. That sensitivity grows out of having been a business leader yourself. So you know what it feels like to have government push down solutions they think are going to work but don't really work.
Nobody likes to get the call from the head office telling you what the new answer is, right? But
That's
in
right.
the U.S., a saying you've probably heard is that the bigger the government gets, the smaller the people get. And what we want to do is take that government activity and continue to push that out to the people of where they are and enable them. There are some programs in North Carolina already there to do that. They're not working like they should be, and I think we have an opportunity to just lean into programs that are there to make them successful.
It would be wonderful to have a Secretary of State who actually worked with the General Assembly to make all the reforms they've made in the arena of business instead of against them. So that's great to hear. Now, EC, in 2018, Elaine Marshall was accused of licensing over 300 notary publics who are not citizens of the United States. And it caused such an uproar in the General Assembly that some were calling for her resignation. So if you're elected as Secretary of State, what are you going to put into place to guard against that happening again?
Yeah, and so that's clearly an area where, at best case, some grayness was exploited for some left-leaning views.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that office is particularly important because when you notarize a document, you're validating somebody's identity.
Mm-hmm.
It's important on legal documents. It's important on voting documents. And it's difficult for me to understand, if you have a person that's not legally a citizen, how could they have the integrity to notarize these documents?
Yeah.
So I think the integrity of that office needs to be restored to where it was. And to do that, we need to clearly stay inside the statutes that have been created, using the documentation that it clearly outlines as what's appropriate for the person to be a notary in North Carolina.
Of course, notaries are one form of witnessing an absentee ballot in North
That's
Carolina.
right.
So if the notaries aren't citizens themselves, it creates some question about the validity of the absentee balloting system.
Yeah, we just need to stay far away from anybody contesting the validity of our votes,
Mm-hmm.
right? We need a system that people have a chance to make their argument, their case as to who's the best candidate,
Mm-hmm.
and then vote, and not have to worry about, well, was the vote, corrupted or
Mhm.
not.
Good. Well, one of the things I noticed recently is that you had asked Elaine Marshall if she supports defunding the police. And she, instead of answering the question, she accused you of attacking her, which, as a woman, I'm so offended when another woman uses that as a way to get out of answering an important question. So were you attacking her, and do you support defunding the police, and what do you think it says about a politician that won't answer that question?
Yeah, so we were not attacking Elaine Marshall. And we do think that the people of North Carolina need to know where their elected officials stand on critical and important issues in the state,
I
particularly
totally
this time,
agree,
right?
yes.
And so I made statements. I clarified exactly where I stood on these issues.
Mm-hmm.
We're asking her to do the same, only so that the people could be aware of some important issues. One of those has come up recently is defunding of the police,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there's a movement out there along that line. We've clearly said that we're not in favor of that movement, and we like to understand where she is. And at this point, she's chosen not to share that with the voters of North Carolina.
That's unfortunate. Well, now some of the things that voters are interested in, EC, are endorsements. And your opponent, Elaine Marshall, has been endorsed by Planned Parenthood, by Equality NC, the Sierra Club, and other ultra-liberal groups. I guess she's getting an award this week from the Bar Association. And she clearly doesn't share the values of the North Carolina Values Coalition. EC, who has endorsed you, and what do you think that says about your candidacy?
Well, yeah, we cherish those endorsements. For a group, or in many cases individuals, to put their name beside of your name, I mean, we understand the importance of that. And so we're grateful for the people that have come along beside of us. And in this case, the difference of endorsements really shine a bright light as to how we think. She and I think and address these issues fundamentally differently. For example, in February, I went back to the March for Life in D.C. to participate in that. I'm a member of some organizations there, and
we tried to find you in the crowd,
Yeah,
but could never
you were
find
there.
you.
That's right. And so it was a pleasure to be with other like-minded people there that were standing for life. At that same day, Elaine Marshall was in Chapel Hill getting an award for Planned Parenthood for her lifetime support and contribution to that organization.
That speaks very loudly.
And so there's a bright light.
Yes.
Right? It's a differences of how we look and think about that critical issue that's there. We've had people come along and endorse us that, like Dr. Dobson, has, from a faith standpoint, has endorsed our campaign in large part because of our stand for life. We've had a number of pro-life organizations that have come along and supported us there as well. FRC has been generous and supported us. A couple weeks ago, Susan B. Anthony announced their endorsement of our campaign, which I'm particularly pleased to have received. So we've got some endorsements from the faith side. We've gotten some endorsements from the political side. Senator Ted Cruz has endorsed our campaign. Lieutenant Governor Jim Gardner has endorsed our campaign. You know, the Buck Newton, the Republican nominee for Attorney General and a senator here in North Carolina, is chairman of our campaign. And so the political leadership has also come along beside of us and given us their support. We've got likewise on the business side that people have come along to support us, and we're honored.
That's great.
To have
That's
their support.
great. Well, I want our audience to know, and I want EC to know, because this is a surprise to him, that it's our high honor tonight to announce that the North Carolina Values Coalition is endorsing
That's just a
EC
surprise.
for Secretary of State. And I think you can see for yourselves that he has the experience, the integrity, and the values to lead the state as the Secretary of State and the best candidate. So congratulations,
Thank
EC.
you so much, Tammy. That's quite an honor, a very high honor. So thank you.
We wish
Thank
you well in the race.
Well, we appreciate it. We're pleased with where we are, and you know, we still got a lot of work to get done. But thank you
You're
for
welcome.
your support.
You're welcome. Before we end our time tonight, EC, I want to ask you, what are the things that guide your life and your decision making?
You know, Tammy, I was fortunate to be raised in a Christian home. While my relationship with Christ is personal, you know, at the early age of 7 is when I accepted Jesus Christ. And so, you know, we continue to grow in that area. I'm continuing to grow in that area. And to the best of our ability, our biblical values shape our thinking on that side. And so, I mean, that's our foundation. Now, along with that, God's overlaid some experiences that He's given to us. And some of that's been on the business experience side that helps us as we go through decision-making processes. And then we've had life experiences that we all have. Those are all filtered through our biblical values that are there. But you know, it's the package, I think, that God uses to, as we journey with Him, to create for us what's necessary for each one of us to make good quality, outstanding, righteous decisions.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. Well, EC, let me ask you, how can people who are listening today make a difference in the direction our country is going?
Well, you know, we started this by talking about why we're running, and I talked about our values being under attack. And I'm getting the opportunity to talk to lots of faith groups or in churches or other places. And look, this is critical. This is critical for me. It's clear that people of faith have stepped away from the microphone. We have let our culture be shaped by other people and let our Christian values be trampled underfoot. And we need to stop that. Right?
Absolutely.
We need to stand up for the things
Yes.
we know. And hey, look, there's people who are going to shout us down. We know how that process goes, and we're bigger than that, right? So we need to stand up. We need to have our voice heard in a sweet, beautiful, but clear way that's there. And so the first thing I ask people to do is to stand with me by standing up, right? I want to be a model in that area. I understand that it's bold at times, and we can all at least say, I'm not with you there. From the campaign perspective, we have a website. It's EC for NC, so it's ecfornc.com. A bio is there, so you'll get more information on me at that camp there. There's opportunities to join our team. We've got a grassroots team across our state that have come together to support us. And then we did something radical, Tammy. At Mondays at 12 o'clock, we have a prayer call for our campaign.
That's wonderful.
The pastor, Susan's my pastor when we were in college, has retired, and he leads our prayer initiative that we have. We pray for our
wow.
nation, pray for our state, and we pray for the campaign. And
That's
we
wonderful.
invite people to come. Some listen, some participate, it's 30 minutes. But if people would join us in that area as well, to continue to lift us up as we go on this journey, be an honor and a blessing.
That's really wonderful. I'm so glad your campaign is led by prayer. Thank you. Well, thank you, EC, for being with us tonight for The Voice. And again, if any of you want to get involved in EC's campaign or contribute to it, you can go to ecfornc.com. That's a great, I love the website name. And we wish you every success in your campaign for Secretary of State. And thank you for running. And we just appreciate the courage and the sacrifice you're making to run for public office.
Well, it's a privilege and the honor. When the coach gives you an opportunity to get off the bench and into the game, you accept the challenge. And so thank you for that.
Wonderful. Well, if you enjoyed tonight's program, I hope that you'll go to our website, ncvalues.org, to watch past episodes of The Voice. And thank you for joining us today. And again, we'll see you next Wednesday for another episode of The Voice.
Which of these issues do you care about? What if you could influence how they were legislated? What if you could impact the outcome of the next election? What if you could change the course of America?